to the legends of the creative and entertainment industries. We talk to those on the rise. Lance Dean Anthony Nielsen asks about the highs, the lows, and everything in between. This is Outcast Creative, and this is Industry Interviews.
Hello and welcome to the Outcast Creative channel. This is Industry Interview 124. Yeah, we've done that many. It's also the 3rd year anniversary of the channel this month. The channel started in its present direction 3 years ago in July of 2022. God, that seems like an awfully long time ago. So thanks very much for tuning in. Don't forget to like and subscribe. If you're watching this on playback, all the links will still be relevant. They'll all be down below. And the crowdfunding campaigns that I'm going to talk about today will still be active for a good while. So do please check them out. So first of all, I'm going to bring in my co-host, Rachel Percy-Art. Thanks so much for joining me, Rachel. Great to see you back again.
Yeah, anytime.
Oh, I thought your audio was not working there for a second. Give me a heart sack. Fantastic. Okay, so for those people that don't know, my primary creative profession is that I'm a writer. I am a playwright, among other things, film director, acting coach. I have a small play on towards the end of the year. It's on in October at the Old Rose and Crown Theatre in Walthamstow. It is about the making of the Magnificent Seven and is appropriately titled Seven Magnificent Egos. Tickets are already on sale. You can already get the tickets. The link is also in the blurb, under the blurb for my guest. It's in my own blurb. You can see it down below. So if you haven't booked a ticket yet and you're one of the viewers from London, please do come and support the play. For no other reason to see me do an absolutely atrocious American accent. In fact, I think I'm doing 2 atrocious American accents, not just one. I'm going to put the link for that in the chat. So do check that out. Also, I promised a really good friend of mine, Joe Bailey, who currently has a GoFundMe. I'm going to post this for her a few times over the next couple of weeks. She has a daughter with a complex myriad of health conditions. They've recently hit hard financial times. So they have a GoFundMe up at the moment. And I won't get into the detail of it now because I don't want to go down too many rabbit holes today because I like to focus on my guest, of course. But do check it out. And if you can help them, that'd be great. If you can't, the one thing you can do is you can share the campaign. You can check out the campaign. You can plug the campaign on social media. That costs nothing but a few seconds of your time. So do please check that out on behalf of Joe and Jordan Bailey. They really would appreciate it. So thanks very much. Okay, so I've had quite a few creatives doing crowdfunding campaigns on the channel before. In fact, I've had people come on specifically to talk about the ways to run a crowdfunding campaign, how to do them successfully and things like that. And, 10 years ago, 10, 12 years ago, they were quite a novel thing. Now, it's much harder to get financial contributions from people, not least of which is because times are hard. People don't have as much spare cash as they used to. However, my guest tonight is already doing quite well with his because his target was not too ambitious, and this is really to produce his first graphic novel. And I find this a particularly interesting topic to be discussing this evening because I've always been interested in producing my own graphic novel. I've always wondered, what are the complexities involved? The different stages, the processes and things you have to go through. And this is really all about getting the first run. Now, when you look at this campaign, you'll see that it was fully funded in 4 days. So yes, the campaign has already been funded, but we're really here to talk about the process, the book itself, why you should buy it, why it might be of interest to you. If you are particularly into the European graphic novels, which I am, I've got the full collection of the Tintin books. I've got many of the Asterix books. If you like that European style of artwork and characters and narrative, I really think you're going to like Save the Songbirds. And Save the Songbirds has been created by the tour de force, passionate graphic artist and writer, Ben Bernard-Smith, who is here with us this evening. Welcome to the Outcast Created channel, sir. Great to have you here.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, you're very, very welcome. Now, I mean, perhaps we could start with you telling us a bit about why you chose to do this type of graphic novel. What inspired you to take on this story? This is part one of a bigger story, presumably, and then maybe after that we'll talk about the different logistical challenges and stages of producing a graphic novel, which I'm sure Rachel will find interesting, being an artist herself.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, so I got into comics when I was how old would I have been? About 9 years old. I remember being in the news agents near my local school, and my mum said, "Go and get a magazine." And I went and had a look, and what I saw was a Dandy comic.
Oh God, Dandy, yeah.
Yeah. In fact, I've got so it was actually this issue of the Dandy.
Hold on, let me enlarge you there so we can see that in all its glory. There we go. Yeah, and how much was that? That was 55p, mate. When I bought it, it was 5 pence.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
When was that?
I'm showing my age clearly, but I mean, I would have got those in the 70s, I think.
Okay.
Probably got my first Dandy comic in, I think, around the same time Star Wars came out, around 77, something like that. And I had Beano as well. I had Beano, and there was one called Whopper. I don't know if you've got any issues with Whopper. There's Beano.
Beano.
Fab, yeah. And I think Whopper had, went the way of, like, when a comic wasn't doing very well, they would combine it. It would become Beano and Whopper for about 3 months, and then gradually it would just go back to Beano again,
Yeah.
Like 2000 AD and Star-Lord. And Star-Lord was a great comic. So you picked up some Beanos and you picked up some Dandies. What happened next?
So I read them for when you're a kid, it's hard to, when you look back, it's hard to tell the time frame, but I read those for I read them for about two years, I think. And during that time, I remember I went to a toy and collectors fair with my dad, and I found this book,
Asterix, and that's the first one I had.
No way, seriously?
Yeah.
Wow, that's weird.
Chieftain Shield was the first one I had, and the second one I had was, I think it was the first book, Asterix and the Magic Cauldron. Isn't that the first one?
I don't know what number it is. The first one was Asterix the Gaul.
You're right, Asterix. Yeah, it was. It was something like the, and then there was the one with Asterix and the Golden Sickle. That one I had as well. That was great. That was a great one. I had that quite early on. Yeah, but anyway, yes. So, fantastic. Do continue.
Yeah. So I enjoyed the Dandy and the Beano. I liked the characters. I liked the crazy styles. The way that the characters just looked so goony and bizarre, sort of big eyes and ridiculous goings on. It was all really good fun. But when I discovered Asterix, it was like something unlocked in my head that it was similar, because it was a similar form and the style is cartoony in a similar way, but it's this long story that isn't just 1 page or 2 pages, and it doesn't just end with some pun or gag. There's gags in there and there's puns in there, but it's this sweeping story over 40 something pages. And so that really drew me to Asterix. And then I also discovered Tintin. And again, this is my first Tintin book.
Mine was Flight 714.
Oh, right.
Which was great because it had like UFOs and there was like machine gun battles, and it was all on a secret island. And yeah, I absolutely loved that book. I've still got it. I've got the whole collection except for one. I think I'm missing the snowman one. The one that's got the the abominable snowman. I can't remember the title.
Oh, Tintin in Tibet.
That's the one. Yeah, that's the only one I'm missing.
Okay, yeah, that's great. That's a really, really good one.
It is a good one.
Yeah, so I discovered Tintin and Asterix and loved those kind of stories. So then I started to, whereas before then I'd been creating my own sort of versions of a weekly comic with different characters. Once I discovered Tintin and Asterix, I started creating more longer stories with, you know, like a hero character or a group of heroes. And one day, me and my family, I think it was about 12, and me and my family were going in a taxi to go for a walk somewhere. And in the taxi, I saw a little placard for a charity called Save Our Songbirds. And in my memory, on one side of the placard was the picture of a songbird, and on the other was a picture of a big bird of prey, though it doesn't really make sense with the name of the charity, but that's like kind of what I remember.
Cool.
And it just gave me this idea of these little songbirds fighting these big birds of prey. And I think in my head it was probably similar to Asterix, because Asterix is this little tiny guy, but he fights these big Romans who have swords and shields. And then I started developing the characters, and over the years it kind of grew and changed as I did, and got older as well.
So what year would that have been? How old would you have been when you first started thinking, oh, what, you know, you had that light bulb moment, I'm going to create a world around some characters of my own here? When would that have been?
So if I think it was 2004, it could have been 2003. And I think it was the summertime. And that's when I had the idea. To be honest, the main characters came about pretty quickly. And so, you know, throughout my teens and then throughout my 20s, those characters have sort of stuck with me. And even though the stories have changed, like I came up with different ideas of what the story could be, the characters were always the same. And yeah, and so they've remained the same. So it's kind of that they're, even though, you know, the idea of songbirds being in danger is kind of the theme of the story, and will probably be the theme of the series if it carries on. The 7 main characters are kind of the core of the idea, really.
And it's set in this sort of alternative universe where, you know, mankind doesn't exist. It's all of the other species that sort of gravitated towards intelligence and walking upright and this kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that sounded really interesting is there's this sort of predatorial hierarchy and certain rules that need to be observed, but then there are people that break those rules, and you have like sort of investigation agencies that have to track down those criminals. I mean, that sounds sort of fascinating. I really like that idea, and I think you had a word for this kind of universe without mankind in it. I think you had a word for it. I forget what that was.
So anthropomorphization is the term of when like animals are made to look like us. Okay, so like anthropomorphic world.
Yeah, which I think is great. And I mean, there's some of the images here. You can see a lot more on the Kickstarter link, which, as I said before, is currently live. Do check it out. So is this, in terms of the size of this, the physical book, is it the same size as the Tintin and Asterix book? Do you have a, oh, there we go. Look at that. Well, let's fill you up on the screen again.
So yeah, so this is a prototype. It's 99% there. There's a few things that I'm changing, like the cover needs adjusting slightly, and some of the characters I realized had slightly things wrong with them, but yeah, it's I made it very much in the format of a Tintin, like a Tintin or Asterix book, where the panels are laid out quite symmetrically.
Very much so. I like that.
It's something that I like. I like it when comics are made like quite symmetrically like that, because it helps you to follow the action. And it means that you get more per page as well. So
yeah, they're quite filmic, aren't they? You know,
Yeah.
I always felt that when I was reading the Asterix books and when I was reading the Tintin books, it always felt like I was reading a movie, you know, which probably explains a lot about my present career. So I can totally see the appeal of that. So how did you knock up that dummy copy? What was involved? Talk us through it.
So like all the way from the sort of when you start with the idea,
because you're doing everything, aren't you? You're doing the coloring, you're doing I mean, maybe let's just talk about the artwork first of all. Do you do pencils?
Yeah.
Do you have anything we can see? Do you have any original pencils within reach?
Just give me a moment.
No problem.
So often when I'm doing the pencils, they'll be inked over. So I can't show any
well, don't worry if you haven't got them to hand, but I mean, just talk.
No, I've got.
Do you do the whole book in pencils first and then go to ink and color and so forth?
I can show you one image if that's helpful.
Yeah, sure.
So let me see. There we go. Can you see that?
It's yes. Ah, fantastic. Look at that. Yeah, and in fact we've got the color version of that on the Kickstarter.
Yeah.
And you're already sort of lining out the speech bubbles and things.
Yeah, so this I mean, if you look really close, you can see all the pencil lines.
Yeah.
And the ink lines, and this was the first thing I drew, so there's a lot of things that I had to go back and like I had to clean up on the computer, but it does give you an idea of, you know, I do it with the pencil and then I just go over it with a fine liner. But when you start with like something much smaller. I'm not sure if I have something like that to show, but it's what's called thumbnails. So it's the idea that it's supposed to be the size of your thumbnail. In fact, I do have thumbnails.
Yeah, just put it up.
It's just the finding them. That's the problem.
It's just what?
It's just the finding them.
Yeah, Rachel,
when you're working on your computer, you can never find them.
Yeah. Well, there's just like folders and folders.
Rachel, have you ever thought about doing a graphic novel? Because I mean, you're only a couple of steps away from it yourself, really.
I have thought about it, but I have a problem with character consistency. Like when I'm done with a character, I move on from a character. But okay. I have thought about it because I would like to work on that. If I realize I have a problem, I want to work on that. But also because I write constantly, it seems like the logical step.
Yeah,
I just have not sat down and done it yet.
Yeah, Ben, do you want to put up that image again that you just had for us?
Yes. Yeah, so this is again from the first page. And it's incredibly rough, just like the first panel which we just looked at. Just gives a very rough idea of what it will be. And then again the rest of it is just very rough character drawings. And I'll take this and then I'll do the actual page, but I do it in half pages, so I do on 2 sheets of A3 make one page, so I draw it quite big,
because I don't think a lot of people realize, you know, just how many stages there are to this, especially if you are doing pencils, you're not using AI programs and that kind of thing, which of course are, you know, very much all the rage these days. You're going to do your rough version first, then you're going to do your finessed version, then you've got to ink over the top of that, then you've got to do the colors and so on, and then you've got to add the, you know, the text, and it's many layers, which is quite, you know, you're a one-man band. This is quite time consuming. So not from when you very first came up with, okay, I'm going to do a graphic novel, but from the point of view, from the time of day one sketching out one of those rough ones to you having that completed book in your hand, that prototype, how long did that take?
Excuse me. So I think I was doing the thumbnails in. So I write it. Some comic artists / writers, they kind of write and draw at the same time. And they sort of think visually. Well, they need to write it and draw it, kind of like they're writing. The drawing is part of the writing process. But for me, I think it's just the way my mind works. I can kind of see it all happening. So I write a full script. And then once I've written the full script, then I do like an idea of the layout of all the panels. And I think I did that my memory's a bit fuzzy before COVID, but I think I did that in 2018. And then in 2019, I got some people to read the script, and then I did a thumbnail version of the entire book, got some people to read that. And then in 2020, I started doing the pages, and then obviously COVID happened, and then I wasn't working during the first, I don't know, 6 months of COVID, something like that. So I spent a lot of the time just making pages of my book, and then once I started working again, I continued working on it, but up until, I don't know, when did I finish? A few months ago, I think. I like fully finished, and actually I've produced this book, and then I've also produced the second part as well, which I'm going to hopefully do a Kickstarter for next year. So it's a 60-page book and a 66-page book. So, and that's taken, where are we now? 2025. So it's taken me 5 years of making the pages and then coloring everything, which is my least favorite job. So that probably slows me down a bit more as well. Well,
hopefully when it, you know, suddenly becomes a runaway success, you can get a colorist in to do that stuff for you.
Yes, that would be very nice.
Yeah, that's the dream.
Very much.
I mean, would you say then, in a strange way, the pandemic has helped this happen a bit quicker?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think that, you know, there's some ways in which when you have more going on, you can actually work faster. So I if we could peer into an alternate reality, I'm not sure how long it would have taken me, but very much that helped me to just pour myself into the making of the book and just get, you know, just churn out the pages and also learn how to do it, because before this, the longest thing I'd done was, you know, David Lloyd, who drew V for Vendetta.
Yeah.
So he has an online like comics magazine that comes out in like weekly issues, and I did a story for that, which I think was about 28 pages if I would compare it to this book. And it was much smaller scale. So going from that to this, there was just so much to learn in terms of composition, and you know, I'd draw through a scene and then I'd realize that I hadn't included this, so I had to go back and add it in or edit it later. So and then, you know, I just make composition decisions that then later I thought, oh no, that doesn't look good, and I'd have to go back and change it. And after a while you think, right, no, I have to just accept that it's done now. It is the way it is. I can't keep fiddling with it, because otherwise it's going to be 2030 before it actually is finished.
Right. Fair enough. I mean, what is the day job? Is it do you work constantly as a graphic artist, or do you have something more mundane that sustains you while you're pursuing these goals?
So no, so I have a full-time job at the moment. So I work as like a data officer and customer service person. So yeah, just work like doing data and customer service on the computer.
Right. Okay. So I mean, really, the goal is, I imagine that the life goal is to become a full-time graphic artist, ideally, and if that's predominantly doing your own stuff, your own illustration, your own comics, so much the better. I mean, we're quite lucky, aren't we, in the sense that people that are designing board games, people that are designing comics, or even producing their first record or stuff like that, crowdfunding and the explosion of social media has allowed us a market where you can, at the very least, produce your item. Whether it becomes a runaway success or not is dependent on a huge number of other factors. But because your crowdfunding campaign, it finishes tomorrow, it's only 23 hours left on it, but you have already reached it. But I imagine that the goal now is really to increase. It's all about increasing the readership, increasing the fan base of people that want to buy and read Save the Songbirds.
Yeah, exactly. So it's you know, I the funding goal. So I work in a place where they have a printing room, and they said that they'd let me use it to print the books.
Oh, that's very kind of them.
Yeah.
That is
so yeah, incredibly just such a blessing. So so in a way, the funding goal was, it could have been like one copy of the book, because I'm not having to pay a printers to do like a block printing of however many copies of my book. So it could have been the price of one book, but it looks a bit strange on Kickstarter if your funding goal is £12. So
right.
So I made it 500 because it sounded it didn't sound fishy, but it could have been any price really, because the thing about being on Kickstarter is, you know, some people do it because they need to have a certain amount of funding to actually produce the thing, whereas I've produced it, and in a way I'm using it like a pre-order and a way of helping get the word out to people. Because if somebody knows Kickstarter, they'll be like, oh fine, yeah, I'll sign into my Kickstarter account and back the book. Whereas if it's just like, if I've just created it on my website and I've got a pre-order there, no one's going to see it. So so that's really why I did the Kickstarter. And I just want more and more people to read the book, because you know, we were chatting a little bit before the show started. It's hard to sell your own book, but I do think that it's good. And I do think if people have enjoyed comics at any time in their lives, especially Asterix or Tintin, or the Beano or the Dandy, then I think that they would, you know, they'd enjoy this book.
I mean, graphic novels are massive in France and Belgium. And I remember going into a comic shop there as a kid when we were on holiday. We travelled from the north down to the south, so I got to go in about 5 or 6 of these in different towns as we went down. And I was in absolute awe at the huge number that there were. Not only was this huge number, but you know, it was all things and characters that I'd never seen before. I mean, obviously Asterix and Tintin had travelled globally, but there was all of these other things and characters. It's a massive industry over there. Is there any way you can tap into that market? I mean, can you take this to any of the major publishers over there and say, look, what I've done? How hard is it to crack that egg?
So so I did go to a comic festival in France. When did I go? a couple of years ago in January.
I mean, did you have a stall, or were you just visiting with business cards and wandering about?
Just visiting. So I went with some. I'd got to know some comic artists from. I went to the Lakes Comic Art Festival a number of years ago. Was selling like a previous comic that I'd made.
And sorry, what is that? The Lakes Comic Arts Festival? Because this is all new to me. So tell us about that.
So it's a comic festival. It's like a comic convention, but whereas comic cons are more like movies and TV now.
Yeah.
This is more just comics. So people like me who've created their own comics, but then also other, bigger publishers will turn up as well with their books, and just like a convention, they're selling their comics. And I went along and I tabled it. I'm going to the Lakes Comic Art Festival again actually this September to sell my comic, Save the Songbirds. But I went previously, met these guys, and there you go.
Yeah, we're fast on the draw here with this kind of thing. Yeah, so this is on in September 2025. I mean,
yes.
So what's the game plan when you go this time? You've got a physical book, which is a great thing. You can maybe take some spare copies to give to some bigwigs. I mean, it's got to be quite intimidating at the same time.
It is. I think you can sit there and if lots of people are walking past, you're just like, oh, what am I doing wrong? Does it look bad? Am I giving off the wrong vibe? All these kind of thoughts come into your mind, and you kind of have to put those out of your mind and just go, no, just put on a professional air and just hope that people come. You can.
So do you have a stand this time for your book?
Yeah. So I'll have a table,
right.
and on the table I'll array the book, and yeah, just try and sell some copies, just try and get more audience members. Really,
you're going to have a couple of banner stands made up. Those things that they're great.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I'll have to work out what to put on it, but because I've got some of the books that I want to bring out after part 1 and 2 of this Save the Songbirds story is done. I'm going to do some slightly different comics in the future, right. So I need to keep it relevant. But yes, probably we'll have that a stand, like a big
mock up some exciting covers maybe, and you've got one for the Songbirds and then another one for coming soon.
That's
to either side of the table. That might be quite good.
I hadn't thought of that. Yeah, that's a good idea. Thank you.
Wow, chucking these ideas out. You're getting my producer's brain going here. I mean, because this is very similar to going to the Cannes Film Festival. All the big companies are there, all the small independents are there, and everybody's wandering around either with a film to sell or maybe looking to buy one. And it's as my friend Jason Fleming said to me, it's a bun fight, and no one really knows who's who. So you're quite right when you say, no matter who walks past your table, whether they engage with you or whether they look like they're putting their nose up, you just got to maintain a positive professional attitude no matter what, because people pick up on that energy. And if you're constantly positive, I think people will be drawn to it. I think it's also quite an interesting and unique and original concept. You don't see a lot of comic book narratives set within this kind of world. I wouldn't say. I mean, I'm a casual comic reader. I'm not one of these guys that goes into the comic shop and buys 20 issues every week. I go in there once in a while and pick up a graphic novel that I think looks interesting, but because I just don't have space. I mean, apart from anything. So, but I think what you've got is quite a unique piece, and
thank you.
I think, especially if you could get it, there must be one of these as well in Europe, and I'm sure it would be worth your time and money going there, and even doing some, let's say you did one in Belgium, or let's say you did one in France, doing some French mock-up covers in French of your book, would absolutely be worth your time, I think.
Yeah, so I went to French comic festival. It's in a place called Angoulême, I think, if I've pronounced it correctly. So I think it is definitely something I want to pursue, because, as you say, comics are absolutely huge in France and Belgium. And whenever a new Asterix book comes out, this is what I've heard anyway. Whenever a new Asterix book comes out, it's the biggest selling book of the year, of any book.
Are they still churning out Asterix books?
Yeah. So they started to make new ones. I want to say 5 years ago, but it probably was more like 10. It was with the blessing of the illustrator, who's now subsequently passed away. But
yeah, because it was two of them, wasn't it, together, and one of them passed away. And
yeah, so Rennie Goscinny died, I think, in late 80s.
Yeah.
And then Albert Uderzo, he carried on drawing it and then also writing it. And then I think it was, I think it was probably about 2011, sometime like that, maybe a little later. A new artist and writer took over, and they kept going. I haven't read any of them, because I just think there's going to be like 100 of them by the time I'm an old man, and I'm just not going to have the shelf space. And I kind of just think, no, just the original writer and artist. But yeah, it's so big that it's the biggest book. It's the biggest selling book that comes out. But I think because of the fact it's such a huge industry, it also can make it harder to get into, because the level of quality is just so high. So it would definitely be something I pursue. But
have you seen? I mean, since AI has become a thing, have you seen? Has that had an impact? Has that, are there people basically using AI to produce comics?
I haven't seen anything that's of note. Like, I've not seen somebody, like an article that's like, hey, look, this comic was made with AI. Look how amazing it is. And I think something like graphic design, or that kind of artwork where it's just one image on its own, I think that's more like under threat from AI. But when it's an entire story, and the intricacies of the characters and the expressions and everything like that, I think to do it with AI, you would have to put in a lot of effort anyway to help the AI to do it properly. Like, you'd have to edit the AI images, I would imagine. So at this stage anyway, I think that it's not really a threat. And actually, the kind of audience that will probably buy comics, most of them don't want something that's created by AI. They want something that they know that the writer and artist have poured themselves into. They want that experience of knowing somebody's really put that effort in. Yeah.
Where,
I mean, sorry, go ahead, Rachel.
sorry to break in.
No,
where AI has been a problem with comics is digital comics.
Oh, right.
Because when digital comics became a big thing, like you had Webtoons and the other apps for that, people started using AI when it first started, and it was just stealing images directly from other comics and plugging it into new comics. And it did become a big problem on there, and I think that's one reason that digital comics have a little bit of a bad reputation right now, because you cannot trust that someone actually made it anymore. And it is hard to get an AI to do consistent characters, I assume. I have no idea. I don't mess with that. But people will read it even if it doesn't look right, and that's a big problem.
Yeah, I mean, I know you've had people say, oh, your stuff's AI, and then you've been like, hey, here are the pencils drawings, so, go away.
Wow.
Yeah,
so that's quite handy. I managed to get the official Asterix website up, and just curious to see actually how many of the comics pre-1996. There's a few that I haven't read, but the Chieftain Shield was definitely the first one that I got, and then Asterix and the Cauldron and Asterix and the Golden Sickle were the other two that I remember that I physically owned for a very long time. And I think I used to go down the library, and it used to be like a fight to get the Asterix books. You go down the library, they'd have the whole lot. They'd have two of them, but you'd be lucky if there was one there and maybe a couple of Tintin books. And I'd go to that place every time, and I'd even rent out the same ones I'd already read, and my mum would be trying to steer me unsuccessfully towards Tess of the D'Urbervilles or something. That wasn't happening. But I mean, is the sort of ultimate goal to kind of have a range this big set within that universe? Is that kind of where you're looking?
Yeah, maybe not as many as Asterix.
No, indeed, 10 would be enough. But,
Yeah. I think this is part one of a two-part story. So I very much have more stories that I want to tell with these characters and in this world. So part 1 and 2 is a self-contained story, and it basically wraps up everything by the end. There's like a one sort of lingering question, and there's this sense of like, okay, it's going to go on. There's going to be more to it, but it's just whether it's successful, because it took me so long to create. So yeah, my hope is that somehow I'm successful enough to be able to keep making them. That would be the goal.
And yeah, you said sort of 2 books in 5 years, and that's with modern technologies and modern techniques. Now we know why the Asterix books it took so long to come out, because they were they didn't come out every week. I remember this is some of your other stuff. And people watching should definitely check out Ben's website, because you've got Dina's Day Out here, which is this an earlier children's book? So
this was a comic when I went to the Lakes Festival previously. This is a comic I was selling. So it was like, how many pages would it have been? About 18 pages, 20 pages, something like that.
Right.
And it was a web comic I did for a short time, and then I collected it together into this, and I still plan to finish the story at some point, and then do a Kickstarter for the completed version. And then if you scroll up a bit,
this way.
Yeah.
Yep.
So this one that's the story I did for Aces Weekly, David Lloyd's comics magazine. And again, I hope to finish, sort of update it a bit, expand it a bit, and then bring that out as a book as well. So I have other ideas as well as Save the Songbirds, sort of on the back burner.
Were you a fan of there was another comic called Whoopee. I don't know if you remember that.
I have one issue of Whoopee, but I think it finished. I think it finished in the 80s. I was born in 1992.
So there was an artist. Again, I'm not sure if you're familiar with him. I absolutely loved him as a kid, and he was called Ken Reed.
Yes.
Yeah. See, I thought you would know him, and he did these. The whole reason I bought Whoopee was on the back of every issue of Whoopee, there was one of Ken Reed's Worldwide Weirdies. And there's now a book out with all of his artwork on it, which is great. And he would do these, the petrifying pyramid. I think this was the first one that came out. And these were great. And I used to kind of cut them out and save them. And of course, they were produced on very, I don't want to say poor quality paper. It was good for the time, but obviously it was stuff that was not going to last unless you put it in plastic. And so gradually over the years, they all got destroyed. And of course, I never got to get every single one of them either. I used to pick a lot of them up at car boot sales and things like that. But I absolutely loved these. I thought they were great. As a kid, I was always into going on ghost trains and stuff like this. And you'd see similar artwork on the walls that people had done. And I always loved Ken Reed. I think there's about 3 or 4 books of his out, because he did a couple of different ranges of this type of thing. Have you ever sort of doing artwork in not in this style, but you know, kind of one-off pieces maybe that might. You could do one-off pieces for the world, couldn't you? You could do different buildings, or you could do the 7 wonders of the world, of the world of the creatures that you've created. So you could do the 7 wonders of the world of that world. That could be quite an interesting thing to do, maybe as the artist. Bit of world building.
So yeah, I did. I'm trying to find, because the characters from the Weird World of Wilfred Weed, I created. Let's see. If I just share again.
Yes, please. Just anything you want to show us, please do. And anyone who's got questions, I do see a couple of questions in the chat, so I'll get to those in a sec. If you've got more questions for Ben, pop them in the chat, and I will get to those.
So I created these like strange characters by I'd scribble on a page, and then within the lines I would try and see a crazy character.
I love these. This is great.
So, and then once I decided like there must be a story I can tell with these bizarre characters. So, and that's sort of what the Weird World of Wilfred Weed,
right,
what it was. So
you could almost produce these as a set of bubblegum cards, couldn't you? Would that be feasible? I don't know what the printing costs would be, but
yeah, I don't know. That's another good idea, Lance.
Mate, I'm full of these. You know, you could do
them as stickers.
Yeah,
the stickers. Sorry. Yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah,
stickers. Yeah, I mean, I think if you created this kind of additional merch to go on with along with the world that was fun, that kind of tapped into that kind of garbage pail kids mentality. I know kids love everything on their phone these days, but you know what? The parents would love to get them away from those phones. So that's anything physical that you can give them, especially if you could create some kind of game, maybe a card game, or I don't know. Thinking now, you know, I mean, I'm a man who's got a big collection of games behind me, so. But so, I mean, the Weird World of Wilfred Weed, what was the inspiration for that? How did that come about? Maybe we shouldn't discuss it. I don't know. This is, by the way, this is not a kids channel, so you can speak openly. Oh, sorry, wrong image. I meant to put the other one back up.
So I'm not 100% sure where, as I say, I drew those characters because I think when I was younger, I'd come up with this way of creating characters. I'd scribble. I'm trying to find. I wish I'd find. I scanned one of them. Oh, here we are. I'll just share this.
Sure.
This will show what I mean. So, right. Can you see that scribbly?
I'm sure we can.
Those blue scribbles.
Let me just take this down for a second. Yep.
So I had this way of creating characters when I was younger, and then I remembered it in my 20s and thought I'd give it another go. And I'd just scribble sometimes without looking on the page, and then I'd look into the scribble and I'd think, right, can I see eyes? Can I see a nose? Can I see a mouth? And then I would then draw the character in like that.
Oh my god, fascinating.
And then that's it inked as well. So
wow.
So that
really
was
interesting.
That was the way that the characters that inhabit the weird world that Wilfred lives in. That's how they were created. But in terms of the story behind it, I'm not exactly sure where it came from, but the concept is that Wilfred and his family moved to they moved to the countryside. They lived in the city, and they've moved to the countryside to get away from the city. But then when they get there, Wilfred is just terrified by this creepy village that they've moved to and all these creepy inhabitants. But his parents don't seem to see the creepiness. They just think it's all wonderful and lovely. Right. And so he's just constantly like screaming and running away, and they're just unaware as to why he's doing all of this kind of thing. And there is a reason, but it creates quite a lot of humor, sort of visual ridiculousness, which is quite similar to a lot of Ken Reed's stuff. Do you remember Face Ache?
Yes, I do. Yeah.
So that's one of the books I have of Ken Reed's, because they did a collection of his. So
yeah.
But I wasn't I wasn't really direct. I mean, maybe somehow it was in my brain, but I don't remember Ken Reed being a direct inspiration for this. But there's kind of a parallel, I think, that's definitely.
Yeah, I mean, he was more before your time, as I think we established from the price levels we were used to on our respective Beanos. But yeah, I mean, he was definitely from my era. But he did carry on right into the mid 80s, maybe slightly further than that. And it was quite interesting reading. I didn't know much about his background and the other things that he'd done, which was quite interesting. So in terms of, okay, we've got a couple of questions here. So, for example, Keith asks, okay, so if one wants to rock up and buy volume 1, how much, what are we looking at?
So it's £12 and then postage is £4. So I suppose £16.
And that's postage to the UK. Are you doing orders to the USA as well?
I am, yeah. So I basically, because I work in a place that has a warehouse, I got the prices from them as best as I could. So yes, it does go to other countries, but obviously the price then goes up as well.
Yeah, I mean, so somebody can probably order the book and get it to the States, I would think, for around $40, I would think.
It's a bit more than that. So
maybe 50.
That postage for one.
Well, postage is the killer. I mean, yeah, we sent some stuff for one of our Kickstarters to the States, and oh my God, the postage was more than the perks. It was like really ate into our money. It was thank God we didn't have too many, but we had a couple of jackets. We had these limited edition jackets printed up, and sending one of them to the States was about $80 or something. It was horrendous. Yeah, it was crazy. Yeah, it was not cheap.
I was kind of worried about being bitten by that, because I've heard horror stories before about people underestimating postage and then having to basically like make a loss on the Kickstarter because of that. So
I've had that happen.
Have you?
I've had that happen. Yeah, I sent one. No, it was with a physical canvas, which is why I don't sell physical canvases anymore. The order came from the UK, and the cost of shipping was triple what I charged for the canvas. So I don't do that anymore.
I don't blame you.
I like money.
Who's a regular here is, what's the USP? Why should people be interested in the story? And yeah, he's not asking that in a negative way. I guess what he's asking is, what is the pitch? What's the hook for people to get interested in Save the Songbirds?
Yeah, well, as I say, it's quite in line with adventure stories like Asterix and Tintin, and I feel like there are stories like Asterix and Tintin around, but I feel like this is a good amalgamation of those two things. And the story is, it's about a blackbird called Tim and his brother David. They live in this anthropomorphic world, and as children they witness their father, who's an agent of the Anti-Predation Agency, who stops a cat from trying to eat some mice, and this inspires them both to follow in their father's footsteps. Many years later, Tim and David, they join the Anti-Predation Agency as well, but then on Tim's first mission, disaster strikes, and although Tim blames the terrorist involved, he also blames himself as well. So then he cuts himself off from his friends, family, and colleagues, and it seems as though he'll carry this weight of past decisions around with him forever. But then he learns that this organization that this terrorist was part of, called the Hawk Horrors. He suspects they've corrupted the Anti-Predation Agency, and so he has to go it alone to try and stop them, but ends up encountering some Songbird friends who help him. Will hopefully help him take the Hawk Horrors down and stop them doing their villainous plot. So that's kind of the log line of the story.
Do you have a big, fat, blustery bird that at one point says, "Stand by, my Hawkman"? That would be such a good line if you could get it in there.
I don't, but I'll keep it in mind.
Yeah, that would be a good gag. Fantastic stuff. I mean, I think it sounds really great, and it sounds like it's, it sounds like one of those graphic novels that there'd be a lot of humor and fun for the adults, but it would also be perfectly fine for kids to read. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, I say like anyone between the ages of 8 and 88. I mean, I think if you're 89, you'll probably be okay as well. But yeah, just it's like, I kind of see it a bit like somewhere between a Pixar movie and a Marvel movie.
Yeah.
It's suitable for children, but there's guns in it, but there's no like blood or gore. It's very Tintin like, Tintin's got guns in it, but very child friendly as well. So
yeah, and there's a lot of machine gun fire in Tintin, but no one ever seems to take a round to the head,
Yeah, exactly.
There's a lot of
No one
debate
can
going
aim.
There's some debate going on in the chat about whether creative people are left-handed. I don't. Is that the case?
I'm right-handed.
I am right-handed.
I'm right-handed.
Well, so we've got 3 very creative right-handed people on this stream. So Keith, that is bollocks. It's official.
Yeah,
we've said it. We've said it here first. I forgot to ask you these questions at the beginning, so I'll tentatively ask them now, just to get a sense of what influenced you growing up. Do you remember the first movie that you went to see on the big screen at the cinema?
Yeah. So the one I think was the first one. This is the one I remember anyway. Was Disney's Tarzan, the animated one from 2000.
The one with the Phil Collins song.
Lovely.
Yeah.
It was a pretty good movie. I seem to recall I really rather liked that. That was like Son of Man, da, 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 yeah.
Oh, fantastic! Yeah,
You
and at the time,
like that.
Yeah, it was fantastic at the time. Like, at the time, I wasn't sure. I think because I was still getting used to movies. But it very much gripped me, and I was very scared by when Tarzan and Jane and Jane's father got kidnapped at the end by Clayton. But yeah, in subsequent years, I watched it again, and it's fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, also, due to the high quality of film production recently, just films from back in the 90s just look like outstanding Oscar-worthy classics now, because we've had a bit of a drop in quality of late, which is a bit of a shame.
Especially in animation. Good night.
What was the last movie you went to see on the big screen?
Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning.
Yeah, I've not heard good things about that.
No.
Yeah.
Very good stunts, but the story was just so kind of, it felt like it was from a hammy sci-fi movie instead of a story from a Tom Cruise action film. It was very, very strange.
Massively complex and overly explained and expositional from what I've heard. I mean, and I've seen every single one of them, and I don't know, everybody was saying it's such a letdown, and I was like, well, maybe I'm going to spare myself this one, because I've already put myself through a few letdowns, like the last season of Game of Thrones. So I might spare myself. Yeah. So
we don't talk about that last season.
Sorry, Rachel. Go ahead.
We don't talk about that last season. It never happened.
No, of course we don't talk about that. Do you have a benchmark TV show since The Sopranos came out? So that's the late 90s, that you watched, that you had to like binge watch every season of? Was there something that really did it for you? Often a common answer we get to that question is Breaking Bad, although I've had a multitude of others.
I mean, I'm a big fan of Doctor Who.
Interesting.
So I'd say the run by Russell T Davies, series 1 to 4, when it was Christopher Eccleston and then David Tennant, and then when Matt Smith took over, that was kind of my era. I didn't really watch it before then. I got caught up with it, and then Matt Smith was my Doctor, and then I
have to say I loved Matt Smith. When I heard he was cast, I was like, my God, no, that kid, really? And I was thinking, what are they doing? But then he just nailed it. He really made something of the role, and not so impressed with it lately, I have to say.
No, I'm not either. No. I think Peter Capaldi was very good.
He was a good choice.
The writing was a bit iffy towards the end of his run, I think, but there were still some outstanding episodes even towards the end. And then after that, I just I tried with Jodie Whittaker, but I just I've kind of given up on it now, really.
Yeah, it's a shame because you're not alone, and it's now got the lowest figures it ever has. Darth Plato says Matt Smith fan here also. Yeah, Tennant and Smith and Pertwee and Baker are my 4 favorite Doctors. Game of Thrones 8 was the Hindenburg disaster. Indeed, it was. Do you see yourself? I mean, this isn't a million miles away from Doctor Who because it's kind of got that alternative universe. I mean, the TARDIS could, in theory, appear in this in the Save the Songbirds universe. You could draw it in the background of a shot to prove it was there. But I mean, do you see yourself maybe doing a more traditional sci-fi inspired graphic novel at some point? Are there ideas in the works?
Yeah, I have a few. So I have an idea that was heavily inspired. I see you've got Thunderbird 1 and Thunderbird 3 behind you, Lance.
I have also Zero X and Thunderbird 2.
Oh, nice.
Well.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Well, when I started watching Thunderbirds when it was reran in 2000, I got very inspired and created some of my own vehicles that were a part of a space idea, which I still think could work. And so that's one. And then there's a character that would be more still probably cartoony, but more realistic cartoony as a style. But then there's a sci-fi idea that's more like Save the Songbirds, quite cartoony, but to do with aliens and sort of galaxy spanning story, kind of like.
Did you draw the designs for these? Wars. Did you draw the designs for these vehicles? Did that?
Yeah, back in the day when I was 8, 9.
Right.
So
you still have those?
I do. And what's funny is I think when you're a kid, there's occasions where you'll create something and you look back on a lot of the stuff you draw when you're a kid. You look back on and you think, oh, it's got that kind of, it's got that childlike wonder to it. But obviously, in composition, it's not that good. But sometimes it just somehow it happens, and I look back on these vehicles and I actually think they need a bit of work, but actually they look probably better than stuff that I would try to make now, even because when you're a kid, I think you can get so inspired when you're a child. Like most of the ideas I created when I was a child, and I hope to make stories out of most of them. But
I mean, I still have like the fantasy maps I used to draw for my fantasy novel books, and I still haven't written a fantasy novel yet. But I have a whole load of drawings and stuff. I mean, there's a load of other illustrations of your work on your website. Wonderful stuff.
Thank you.
Very expressive, very interesting, very entertaining. People should check this out. There's a whole load of stuff to be found on Ben's website, including more information, of course, about the Save the Songbird universe, which, as I said, be great to see the 7 wonders of the world of the Songbird universe. I think that's a cracking idea, mate. Definitely pursue that one. So apart from the website link that we have for you, and also the Save the Songbirds Kickstarter, which is still there, you may be doing a part 2 to this. People should keep an eye Kickstarter. Where can people follow what you're up to? Do you have an Instagram, stuff like that? Do you have a Twitter?
Yeah, so I'm on Instagram, just at Ben Bernard Smith. I am on X as well. Though I've had an account for years, back when it was called Twitter, but I've never really liked it when it was Twitter or X. It just it's just I find it's always been a place where people kind of shout at each other. So I find that.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. I never got into an argument with someone on Twitter, and I'm certainly not about to start now. Here is Ben's Instagram. I'll pop that in the chat for people, and we'll add that to the information.
Thank you.
Down below earlier. So I mean, if someone wants to get in touch with you and says, "Hello, I own a chain of comic stores in Belgium," of course they wouldn't have that accent. They'd be speaking very differently. And they want to publish your book on a wider scale, this would be a good way for them to get in touch with you.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, give me a message on Instagram. So yeah, I've been posting whilst the Kickstarter's been going on. I've been posting on Instagram, X, and Facebook as well. I've got a Facebook page. So yeah, just
fantastic stuff. Well, look, Ben, it's been great having you on. We've gone a little bit over, but not by too much. I think it's great what you're doing. When book 2 is ready to go, be that a year's time or whatever, reach out to us again. We'll have you back on again. Hopefully the channel will be even bigger than then. And, we're always happy to support and give you what exposure we can. Supporting passionate, independent creatives, of which you are one, is exactly what the channel's here for. So anything we can ever do to help you, just getting back in touch with us. I personally think this looks like a wonderful project. When I've got some excess monies, I should say, I may well grab a couple of copies, and I think it looks really good, and I'll be recommending it without hesitation to a few people, as I'm sure will Rachel. Fantastic.
Absolutely.
So, Ben, did you want to shout out anybody else for assisting or helping you or anything like that before we wrap up?
My friends Tim and Lisa and a young guy called James and my mum, they all read it in its earlier form, gave criticism, so thank you to them. The guys at my workplace that are helping me get the books, will be helping me get the books out when the Kickstarter is finished.
Yeah, should we give that company a shout out? Should we do that? Or
yeah, so I work for a place called Kingsway CLC Trust. It's like a Christian book distributors, like a warehouse. It has various different retail websites, and it's a wholesaler as well. So
is this the one that's based in Eastbourne?
Yes. No.
Okay.
Yes. It is. Yeah. There's different, because I'm in the one that we have offices around the country. There's one in Eastbourne, and then there's one in just into Wales, outside of Chester. So I live in Chester.
Sure.
But it's in Flintshire in Wales. So
regardless of your view on religion, which of course is not something we discuss on this channel. Don't do religion, don't do politics here. But regardless of your view on that, I think it's great that these people are supporting you in this way and helping you produce this effectively, because there are more big companies that could be doing that sort of thing to support the little guy, and small independent businesses are really what, especially creative industries, sort of these creative pockets, are the sort of stuff that make life interesting. I remember you used to be able to walk on any British high street, and there would be an independent mum and pup toy store, and there would be an independent bookshop, probably 2, and there would be somebody else would be selling some knickknacks. There was a great one that did it was a specialist shop that sold toy castles that were all made by hand. Each one of them was individual. You never see that stuff now. because it's impossible for people to make money on retail because of the cost of premises and things like that. And now it's all just lab brooks and charity shops. And, you know, if you have those small independent shops, you're very, very lucky. And so I think it's great that they're supporting you, because, I mean, although you exist within the realm of the internet, so to speak, it's still really important. That's where these kind of creative pockets can thrive. And long may that continue. Also, so don't forget, people, if you are part of the UK comic book scene, you can also meet Ben here. So do pop along to the comicartfestival.com. That's the link for that. I'll pop that in the chat in just a sec. Do check that out. Ben will have a stall there. You can come along, get a signed book, I assume, chat to him, get a selfie even, because, you know, you may be uber famous one day. So, yeah. Well, look, Ben, thanks so much for giving us your time. I really do appreciate you coming on. And like I said, anything we can do to help you down the road in future, we will do that. Just to let people know also that work on the Rave book, Back to Raving at 50, which is my next novel. It is autobiographical. My journey of going back to dancing in my 50s is now completed. We've got a mock-up cover here, which I've just been working on today with my artist, Enzo Superlicious. Yeah, and there's a load of suspicious characters on the front. So that book is going to be available in September. The official launch date is September the 12th. And don't forget, everyone, also to come and support our play, the Outcast Creative play, Seven Magnificent Egos, in October in Walthamstow later on this year, if you can. Well, Rachel, thanks very much for co-hosting. Ben, thanks so much for coming on. Really do appreciate it. I think it looks a wonderful project, and people do support it if you can. And if you've watched this, you know, and maybe graphic novels are not your thing, or pennies are tight and you can't afford to support in that way, remember, you can support any one of my guests that have a crowdfunding campaign. You can support it by simply sharing it. That only costs a few seconds of your time, but you never know who's going to look at that post. It helps get the word out there. So it is really helpful in turning and spreading the word. That's it from us for tonight. We'll be back on Tuesday with the Nielsen ratings, the usual weekly review show. And I think I've got more industry interviews next week. But until then, that's it. Take care.